Welcome into a special five-star edition of the College Football Recruiting Show. We are releasing the 32 five-stars for the class of 2025. Alongside our Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins, and National Recruiting Analyst, Cooper Petagna, I am Emily Proud. And guys, as per usual, before we get into the actual five stars, let's do some background here. I want to know, this is always my favorite question. I'll start with you here on this, Andrew. What have been some of the biggest debates behind the scenes as we get ready to release today?
Well, it's not an easy process, right? We're rolling out, expanding to 32 players, that five-star field. That's designed to reflect the first round of the NFL draft. And the reality is, we're only making the turn here, right? We play 9 holes. We got the back 9 coming up. That's the senior season. So it's a lot of projections. And guys, we really don't feel comfortable about. We are kind of rolling the dice on some of these, but the 32 we're going to name, these are the ones we feel the most confident about at this stage. And I think really the big debate was that cornerback position. You saw the most recent NFL draft. There was 36 corners drafted. It has turned into a premium position, not only in the NFL, but also in the college game. Think about how many top corners are coveted in the transfer portal. So I try to push some more guys into the 32. We only got 4 of them in there. Hey, maybe next time we'll get a few more. Dejoun Lee, he was a big guy. I was standing on the table for out of California, 6'4". He just went 46 feet in the triple jump. This guy, to me, he's a freak athlete. And someone that has ball production. He's physical as well. So, he came up multiple times. Adonis Curry, another big frame corner out of California. So we'll see. We got, again, the senior seasons. We got the all-star games. Maybe Dejoun Lee finishes with a 5th star next to his name.
I'm going to go with the quarterback route here with George McIntyre, their Tennessee commit, currently coming into the day as the number 10 player in the country, number 3 quarterback. And there's a lot to like out of Brentwood Academy in George McIntyre. But we have gotten to see him twice this offseason. And both times we've come away not really thoroughly impressed with the arm. We like what we see on tape. So balancing that in terms of what we've seen from the prospect on the field, also with what we've seen with the live exposure over the offseason. So he's been a really interesting evaluation. There are a couple other guys coming on strong at the quarterback position as well. So that's what we get to do, especially with a year of context left on the field. He's certainly a name that I think has been one of those guys that we've just had to really kind of haggle over and try to figure out the right spot for him.
Always appreciate the transparency and the extra reminder that this is not a finished product. We are writing these names in pencil. You'll still learn a whole lot about them coming up on their senior seasons and more postseason games and all that fun stuff. This is just the first edition. Coop, what's the deepest position group in the top 32, do you think?
I'm going to have to go with offensive line. It's a really, really talented group. You think about David Sanders at the top of that group. You think about a couple other guys as well. Josh Petty comes to mind, Andrew Babalola, some other guys currently outside of the top 32 as well that we like in Carter Lowe. So it's a really, really talented group. And you think about the offensive linemen and the pattern that we saw this last year, 9 offensive linemen drafted in the 2024 NFL draft, 8 of those guys as tackles. So that's a group that we feel like we can get pretty aggressive with. And the good thing about that group as well, the talent is there to match. So no shortage of options at the offensive line group.
Andrew, conversely, what's the position group maybe lacking in some depth in this top 32?
I think you could point to maybe wide receiver. We're going to get into that later in the show, but I'm going to say edge rusher, like pure pass rusher, edge rusher. Zayden Walker, he's a guy that's in the 32. He's already been a 5-star for us. We classify him as a linebacker. I think you can make the case that maybe, hey, he's more of an edge defender. He's versatile, right? We like Zayden Walker. After that, the edge rushers, that group, I don't feel super confident at this stage. We got a few of them inside the 32, and I think those guys you have question marks with. A lot of traits, but not on-field production. We really haven't came across those edge players where it mirrors, all right, the game tape along with the traits, the verified information, what we have seen in the camp setting. So we moved some guys up into striking distance. We'll see what they look like here as seniors, but I'll leave you with this. This time last year, LJ McCray, who finished as a top 5 player for us, signed with Florida, played in the All-American Bowl. He only had 3 sacks as a junior. So it's a developing position. I think we're going to have our eyes peeled as we get into the first 4 games that August, September. Okay, any of these pass rushers, do we need to move them up the board?
All right, guys, let's get to it. We made him wait long enough. Let's go with number 32, the first 5-star on the list, wide receiver Derek Meadows out of Bishop Gorman in Nevada.
I'm going to go with that word that's typically a no-no, and I'm going to go with intriguing to describe Derek Meadows. You talk about a guy that just lacks production, had over 300 yards. He only had 15 receptions last year. 8 of those went for touchdowns, and he averaged over 26 yards per catch last year at Bishop Gorman. Listen, 6'6", 190 pounds plus. So much to like about him. Decorated track and field background. The arrow is up. Quite a roll of the dice here, but this is definitely the guy you want to bet on.
Coming in at number 31, wide receiver Jerome Miles out of Corner Canyon, and he is committed to Ole Miss.
Well, Cooper said a roll of the dice. I think we're doing that here with Jerome Miles. But as we met as a scouting team, right? So me, Cooper, Greg Biggins, Hudson Standish, Gabe Brooks. This is a guy we all loved, and we decided, hey, let's push him up the board. Jerome Miles, he is only 15 years old. He could technically be in the class of 2026. He just became the fastest man in Utah history, broke a 43-year-old record this past weekend. He went 10.36 in the 100-meter dash. Remember Gatlin Bear from the previous cycle? This kid can roll. He's a dynamic threat, and what I also love about him, between the ears, that competitor mentality. He fractured his ankle early on in the season and then returned to action.
Let's go to number 30, where we find quarterback George McIntyre out of Brentwood Academy. He is committed to the home state, Tennessee Vols.
I mentioned we were trying to find a landing spot for George McIntyre. He ends up sliding back from number 10 to number 30, and this is a guy that we really, really liked on the field, despite his team only winning 2 games last season. So coming into the offseason, you have that context. We got to see him twice in the month of April, Oxford and in Nashville. And really physically, there was a lot to be desired. He will have another opportunity here in the next couple of weeks at the Elite 11 finals in Los Angeles. So going to be a guy and a storyline certainly to follow here over the next couple weeks.
Coming in at number 29, defensive lineman Malik Autry out of Opelika, and he is committed to Auburn.
He can clog the drain like few others in this class. Just over 6'5", 320 pounds. Surprisingly light on his feet for that size. Saw him in his spring game, made sure to pull that one up. And he just created negative plays, defeated double teams. I think this is an ideal nose, interior, that 1 tech, that 3 tech. He is a guy that can get the job done there in the middle.
Coming in at number 28, quarterback Hassan Longstreet out of Centennial. He is committed to Texas A&M.
A lot to like with Hassan Longstreet, 6'1", almost 200 pounds, 9-3 as a starter at Centennial last year, playing really good level of competition. And this guy has 11-inch mitts. He can whip it, really good athlete, can get out on the perimeter. We like what we've seen in person, as similar as I talked about George McIntyre, another big opportunity for him over the next couple of weeks at Elite 11 Los Angeles. But in terms of the physical makeup, he's kind of one-on-one there.
At 27, offensive tackle Michael Fasusi out of Louisville from the state of Texas.
A former soccer player that has found his home as an offensive tackle. Look, we think Michael Fasusi could be a bookend type of guy. 52 feet in the shot put, 155 in the discus. He took a notable jump there. We just love the athletic profile, the reach, the power, how he handles himself in pass sets. Also, his vertical jump for a guy that's over 280 pounds, best we have seen the past 2 recruiting cycles. A lot to like about Michael Fasusi. The arrow is pointing up.
At number 26, tight end Lincoln Cure out of Goodland in Kansas.
Andrew compares him to Carter Nelson, and I think that is a phenomenal comparison. If you followed him, 8-man football last year, and Carter Nelson, and a guy that worked his way up our board. But pretty similar here with Lincoln Cure, the athletic profile, 11.02 in the 100-meter, also a guy that won the state champion in the 300-meter hurdles. He's got a basketball background as well. He plays low level of competition, one of those rural guys, but everything we've seen about him, love the profile, arrow pointing up, certainly a guy that we expect to compete at a high level on Saturdays as well.
At number 25, wide receiver Jamie French out of Mandarin in Florida.
One of the most well-rounded wide receiver prospects, elite body control. He can win at the line of scrimmage. Might not have a true turbo, but he gets open and then he gets into the end zone. Caught 62 passes for 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns this past season. He was the alpha dog of the National Combine back in January. He's been excellent every time we have seen him since on the camp and 7-on-7 circuit.
At 24, interior offensive lineman Solomon Thomas out of Rains, and he is committed to Florida State.
Our top interior offensive lineman and the sole one in the top 32 for good reason. And this is a guy that's got it all. Plays left tackle right now, but I think this is a guy that can play multiple spots on the offensive line. Will move inside at the next level, and that's a good thing. I think for him to be able to play in a phone booth kind of accentuates all his strength, brute force at the point of attack. Love the way he can move people. A lot of mass there in the lower body. So I think this is a guy physically that's going to be ready to play sooner rather than later.
At 23, safety Trey McNutt out of Shaker Heights in Ohio.
Yeah, and he's the only safety we have inside this quote-unquote round one so far. Position's getting a little devalued at the next level, but Trey McNutt, if you're going to stick a split safety prospect in there, you want him to look like this. This is a guy that has a high IQ. He can jump routes, 12 PBUs there as a junior, also made some plays on the offensive side of the ball. Saw him at the OT7 tournament in Orlando. He baited quarterbacks into decisions, so we love the total package. He can be a slot defender. He's a willing participant in run support. A lot to like about Trey McNutt.
At 22, wide receiver Caleb Cunningham out of Choctaw County in Mississippi.
One of the bouncier prospects in this class, especially at the receiver position. You talk about the high jump, the long jump, the triple jump. He's got excellent numbers in all of those field events. He's also got an excellent basketball background as well, but don't be fooled. I mean, I love his run after catch ability. He plays above the rim. You see that basketball presence when you turn on the tape with Caleb Cunningham. Goes by the nickname of Freak Daddy. So if you're into that type of stuff, this is certainly a guy, if you turn on the tape, you can understand why he got a nickname like that.
Love the nicknames. Let's go to number 21, tight end Elias Williams, the second tight end highest rated out of Camden County. He is committed to Georgia.
I'm sorry, Coop. I'm giving Elias Williams the Freak Daddy tag in the 2025 cycle. 6'6", 240 pounds. He's got a 7-foot wingspan. This kid is a walking mismatch. You see, he's committed to Georgia. Remember Darnell Washington a few years ago there in Athens before Brock Bowers became Brock Bowers? That is Elias Williams. Also a talented basketball player. He can do it all. Get him the ball in the red zone.
I love it. All right, let's take a little breather and remind you of the players 27 through 32, and I have to ask about 31 there. Jerome Miles, Andrew, up 162 spots. What led to that meteoric, I wouldn't even call it meteoric, whatever a bigger word for that is, what led to this incredible rise?
Well, like I said, Emily, I think the wide receiver position it's difficult for us to stack. There's a lot of names, a lot of fast kids. We are looking for a vertical threat. And I brought up Jerome Miles is only 15 years old. You know, some of these other receivers in the class are already 18. So he's 3 years younger than him. I just love how he is wired. I brought it up. You know, he broke his ankle week 3, comes back and helps Corner Canyon win a state title there in Utah. Had 2 touchdown catches in the final game. So, you know, a lot to like in terms of he's just now figuring it out. And you think about him in that Ole Miss offense, and I know Michigan just offered Jerome Miles. They're going to try to get involved. He's kind of got that Gatlin Bear track profile in just in terms of how fast he is, but he's a guy where the arrow appears to be pointing up, and I think he's one of the best true deep threats in the class.
The arrow clearly pointing up next to him, 162 spots up. Exciting to see the big risers like that. Speaking of big, Coop, we talked about this at the beginning of the show and just how deep this offensive line group is. So what makes a guy like Michael Fasusi, I'm going to use your word, so intriguing?
Well, he's a box checker of about every degree when you look at Michael Fasusi, 6'5", 290 pounds. We mentioned the 31-plus inch vert, which is just unique and rare to somebody of his size. Also, 35-plus inch arms. He almost has a 7-foot wing. He's got 155-foot-plus disc throw as well. So when you start adding all that up and then you turn on the tape, this is a guy who play left tackle, you play right tackle, can get to the second level. I think you can ask him to do a lot of different things. I think the good thing about Michael Fasusi, he's still trying to figure it out technically as well, but the rare strength, power, athleticism, all that combination is there. And then on top of it, when you're evaluating the field of 32, why not buy stock in the offensive line? I just talked about 9 of those guys going in the first round, 8 of those guys being tackled. So Fasusi, he made it pretty easy on us, to be honest, took the decision right out of our hands.
Speaking of big guys in the trenches, over on the defensive line, Malik Autry, Andrew, I think has kind of a unique body type for this position at 300 pounds, playing on the defensive side of the ball. How did that factor into his evaluation?
Well, we wanted to get some heavy Chevys into the top 32, and Malik Autry, it was really him and then the 2 Clemson commits. You had Amari Adams, Isaiah Campbell. We went back and forth, and Autry is someone that we really just came away from that Under Armour Next camp in Atlanta back in February, and we were raving about him. He was alpha dog for the day. I mentioned it, Opelika, they just played their spring game. There's a play on he made in that where, he's running full speed about 40 yards in pursuit. And then you factor in, okay, this guy is 320 pounds. It's a heck of a play, even though he didn't make the stop. Just him flushing out that pocket and creating, a negative situation for the offense. Malik Autry, he's committed to Auburn, but you read our guys at 24/7 Sports, you see a ton of college football playoff regulars are still after him, and that just shows how rare he is in this class. There's really not a lot of big bodies like him. You need them. You want to win at the point of attack. If you're in the SEC or in the Big Ten, Malik Autry, you try to get him now, because if not, you're going to be battling everyone in the transfer portal for that type of body.
All right, before we move on to the next group, let's remind you of the players 21 through 26. Andrew loves his tight ends. He's got 2 in this group here. Pretty exciting to see 2 5-star tight ends. Let's go ahead and move on to number 20. We know you all want to know what the 5 stars are. At 20, it is the athlete Michael Terry III out of Alamo Heights in Texas.
And that's what he is, pound for pound, maybe one of the most unique athletes in the country. 6'2 plus, 211 pounds. He's got a 10.83 to his name. He's also got a 6'4 high jump. This guy can do a little bit of everything. Quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, plays linebacker on defense. He had 20 rushing touchdowns. He had 10 of those were receiving as well. So you talk about the versatility. Andrew's player comparison for him is Cordell Patterson. If you want one more in college and recent, I think Jaheim Bell. So Swiss Army knife in terms of what he can do skill set wise. You need a vision for this player that's going to be very important for him.
Our number 19 player in this class, edge Jared Smith out of Thompson in Alabama.
Yeah, Emily, and he's one of these guys I was hinting at. We love the traits. Jared Smith's a kid I've seen on the camp circuit for 3 straight years now, and you could take any of those workouts and piece them together, and it's kind of the same thing. We've been waiting for him to produce on the field. I thought he did it last week in Thompson's spring game. They were using him in an off-ball linebacker role, showed a ton of range, was able to get up after the quarterback. Feeling better about Jared Smith right now.
At number 18, offensive tackle Ty Haywood out of Denton in Texas.
Yeah, we keep talking about these tackles, and everybody's got their flavor. This is my flavor right here in Ty Haywood. I mean, you talk about a guy that's got a ceiling, but also has one of the highest floors of anybody at the position. He's got some slight hip ankle stiffness, kind of reminds me of Alex Leatherwood, the former Alabama standout and first-round draft pick, but he is a bull at the point of attack, playing really good competition at Denton Ryan. Good athlete. I think long-term probably going to end up on the right side. Could even potentially move inside. But I love this kid. Love what he brings to the table. Somebody's getting a really, really good player with Ty Haywood.
At number 17, edge Isaiah Gibson out of Warner Robins. He is committed to USC.
Long-limbed edge rusher. This guy is high cut in the waist. Me and Coop have actually gone back and forth. They played him on the interior at times there at Warner Robins. I think he's more of just a two-point guy, come off the edge. I think that's where he is his best. He's got gap-closing burst, 17 sacks as a junior. I think he's going to maybe potentially, top that number here as a senior. Really good get for USC when you think about them moving into the Big Ten.
At number 16, quarterback Julian Lewis out of Carrollton. He is committed to USC.
Yeah, status quo here for Julian Lewis. As I mentioned with the other quarterbacks, he's got a big opportunity here in LA at the Elite 11 finals. But if you're talking about resume, nobody's got a better resume than Julian Lewis. The reclassification, he's 25-3 over his last 2 seasons. He's improved his completion percentage year over year. He's playing some of the best level of competition in the country. The biggest thing with him is physical upside. So you're going to see some of the best arms in the country in LA next month. That's going to be a really big opportunity for him to show that he belongs.
At number 15, defensive lineman Iose Epinesa out of Edwardsville in Illinois.
We're flying a little blind here with Epinesa in terms we don't have an in-person evaluation, but this is the younger brother, a former Iowa star, current Buffalo Bill, AJ Epinesa. I think he is a polished pass rusher, great body control. He's got some basketball footage out there, kind of a nimble big man on the hardwood, nuclear throwing data. Type of guy that if you don't match his energy, he's going to beat you, or he's going to beat you with that first quick step, really like AJ Epinesa, or excuse me, Iose Epinesa.
We like them both. At number 14, offensive tackle Andrew Babalola out of Blue Valley Northwest in Kansas.
Yeah, this is my boy Babs, and I keep getting these offensive tackles, but I love these guys. And you think about one of the best athletes in the class, I think that's Andrew Babalola, and I think this is a raw developmental upside play for us, especially tucking him inside the top 16. But you think about the massive upside that comes with Andrew Babalola. No doubt going to need a redshirt year at the next level, but in terms of what this guy could be, he's got a sky-high potential.
At number 13, offensive tackle Josh Petty out of Fellowship Christian School in Georgia.
I finally got one of these offensive tackles. He might be my flavor of the group, and that's because I've seen him in person. Full-time two-way player there at Fellowship Christian School. I think he could be a top 247 defensive lineman if he wanted to go that route. Got a really decorated wrestling background that constantly shows up on tape. He's got a nasty finisher, good in hand-to-hand combat. I think the biggest thing with Josh Petty is how big is he going to be able to get? I think he's on the left side, maybe on the right side, but tons of tools to mold for the long haul.
At number 12, it's defensive lineman Justice Terry out of Manchester. He is committed to USC.
Yeah, one of my favorite guys here is 6'5", 275 pounds, and I love his versatility. I mean, you can play him anywhere. You can play 5 technique, 3 technique, 1 technique if you need it, but he utilizes his combination of size, length, and strength right now pretty perfectly for a guy where he is in his development. He's got some things to clean up, but think about the production that he has, 13 sacks last season. So a lot to like with him, arrow pointing up.
At number 11, wide receiver Kalik Lockett out of Saxe, Texas.
This is Gabe Brooks' guy. He says he's got the best junior tape in the 2025 class. I'm going to tend to agree here. If you have not checked it out, everyone pull it up once we're done with this show. He wins with his release. He's a high flyer, natural bounce, over 1,000 yards, slender frame, but he's got big features, wingspan, hand measurements, more of a finesse player. But, man, I love the ability for Kalik Lockett to go up and get the football, land, and then run away from defenders and get into that end zone. I think it's so important with the wide receiver position. Everyone wants Kalik Lockett, interested to see where he ends up as he's taking a bunch of visits this summer.
We just hit on a skill position, but man, a lot of big guys in this group. You got some offensive tackles, pair of edges, another quarterback here in this group. But something that you won't see on the graphic is 3 USC commits coming from 11 to 20 here in the 5-star range. Coop, you take a look at this. Who stands out in this group of prospects?
I'm going to have to go with Ty Haywood. Big surprise, obviously, after I talked glowingly about him. But there's something about this kid when you turn on the tape that you feel really, really good about what he is going to be, not only immediately when he steps in a locker room at the collegiate level, but just about what he brings long-term as well. And listen, there's a lot of intriguing players. We talked about guys like Fasusi. We talked about guys like Babalola, Josh Petty. You could go a lot of different ways here with what you want at the offensive tackle position. But with Ty Haywood, he kind of reminds me a lot of Tyler Booker. I think same conversation coming out with Tyler Booker. Is this going to be a guy that can stay at the left tackle spot? Is he going to be a right tackle? Is he going to move inside the guard? Ultimately, at the end of the day, throw all that out the window. you're getting a heck of a player with this kid in Ty Haywood. So I might be the highest on Ty Haywood out of the group, but just love the kid, love the way that he plays the game, the physical tenacity, and really love what he brings in the run game as well. So I don't think you can go wrong with a multitude of these guys, but that's the one that stands out to me.
I'm going to follow it up with Jared Smith here, Coop. I mean, I mentioned him before. I feel like he's one of these guys where we want to pull the plug, move him out, and then he just brings you back in, whether you see him in a combine type of setting. I said it, he's over 6'6". He's got a monster reach. I think he wears like size 18 shoes. You see the growth potential with him, but it just hasn't translated on the field. I thought that spring game last week, him playing that off-ball linebacker role, he finally felt comfortable in his skin in terms of, okay, I see the football, I'm going to go get the football, and I'm going to hit someone when I get there. I thought that was very, very encouraging. I mentioned it with the edge rushers, still trying to figure out this group, who's going to emerge. I hope it's Jared Smith because I love the traits with him.
I love to give you guys the 5-star prospects, not you two. They already know who they are, but you, the viewer. And now we are on to the top 10. Let's start with the number 10 player in the nation. That is linebacker Zayden Walker out of Sly County in Georgia.
Yeah, this one is one of my favorites in the entire cycle, and Zayden Walker dictates football games as a defensive player. You can play him on ball, you can play him off ball. I love the tenacity with how he plays. He plays the game proactive. We have proactive athletes, we have reactive athletes. This guy is a proactive athlete, so love his tenacity, love his football instincts. He's always around the football, and if there is one guy, I think I've said this every time I've talked about Zayden Walker, that was born to play for Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs, it's this kid. So this guy, obviously a big-time recruitment with Georgia in South Carolina, but a heck of a player.
At number 9, cornerback DJ Pickett out of Zephyr Hills in Florida.
I call him a pterodactyl. That's because, I mean, he's listed there at 6'2". I think he's closer to 6'3". He is a tall, long corner. Some schools want to play him on offense as a wide receiver, but I think the combo of the speed and the length warrants a look on the outside. He's gone sub 11 in the 100-meter dash 6 times this spring. Love him as a reactionary player. He can go find the football. DJ Pickett, certainly a guy that can shut down one side of the field.
At number 8, defensive lineman Elijah Griffin out of Savannah Christian Prep in Georgia.
If there's a guy that's just gotten lost in the shuffle in the top 10, it's Elijah Griffin. We don't really talk about him that much. 290 pounds. He's got 34-plus-inch arms. He is very, very long, and he is very, very versatile. You think about his first step quickness, that's really how he wins, but he can go speed to power as well. And if you're looking for a recent comp, he reminds me of DJ Hicks, who signed with Texas A&M, now with the Aggies, a former 5-star. He can do a little bit of everything. So this kid, really, really high floor, but there is a lot to tap into at the next level as well.
At number 7, linebacker Jonah Williams out of Ball in Texas.
This might be my favorite defender here in the 2025 cycle. Reminds me of former Clemson star Isaiah Simmons. You know, he plays safety, he plays wide receiver. You kind of want to put him in that linebacker mold when you see him in size, but dig into the testing profile. He's quick enough to play safety. Watch the footage. He can be a man-on-man coverage. I just hope Jonah Williams actually plays football because he's also a really talented baseball prospect. And MLB scouts are already talking about him potentially being, you know, a round 1, round 2 guy. So Isaiah Simmons, potential defensive chess piece. Excuse me, Jonah Williams.
At number 6, cornerback Naeem Offord out of Parker. He is committed to Ohio State.
It's crazy the Buckeyes got 2 of these guys in Naeem Offord and Devin Sanchez. But let's talk about Offord, 6 foot plus. He's got a long wingspan at 6'6", 11'1" in the broad jump. He's lower body explosive, but he's also super fluid, too. I like this guy, ability and press man. He can play off ball, 4 INTs as a junior. Saw a little uptick there. Really dynamic athlete. Obviously, if you're in this range, you know you have that as well. 2-way snaps. He's got some bounce to him. And the good thing about Naeem Offord, I think technically there's still a lot to clean up, which is a good thing. That's what we think of the athlete. Ohio State as a day 1 dude in Naeem Offord.
A lot of day 1 dudes in this class of 2025 so far. Before we move on to our top 5, let's remind you 6 through 10. And we want to put a little spotlight on Jonah Williams, who Andrew just talked about his versatility. Just how unique is what they could potentially do with him on the defensive side of the ball, whoever ends up with him?
I think behind the scenes in the scouting department, I mean, we went back and forth. Do we list him as a safety? Do we list him as a linebacker? Ultimately, we stuck with linebacker because I think he's a guy that's going to be closer to the line of scrimmage, if he does play football. I brought up that baseball thing, and, MLB scouts have told Mike Roach, who does an excellent job for us, like, it's real. I mean, there's a chance he could get a sizable contract and he could just go that route. Hopefully, again, that he doesn't. But, with where we are right now on Saturdays and Sundays, I mean, the position lines continue to get blurred. Really, what is a slot defender? What is a linebacker? What is a safety? To me, Jonah Williams is the type of guy you get him on the field because he's an exceptional athlete, and then you figure it out later.
Yeah, I think another second-level defender that really has kind of stood out in this group, Zayden Walker. I talked about him, his ability to dictate a football game. I thought about the last defender that I thought about that you just always had to account for on the defensive side of the ball. He played a different position. That was Tyrann Mathieu. And what I mean with Zayden Walker is this guy, you just have to watch wherever he is. They can move him around. You can flex him out, and he's comfortable doing a little bit of everything. I love the shock that he plays with. He's strong. He's violent at the point of attack. He can play sideline to sideline. He's as versatile as they come, and you think about a guy that just plays with a certain competitive temperament, plays the linebacker position the right way. He is a football player with elite level traits. Often it's really kind of one or the other. You got the traits, but you're not really that guy that's got the feel of everything. This guy is a complete package. And talk about somebody that, I keep talking about these day one guys. Zayden Walker is going to make his impact felt certainly on day one when he steps onto a college campus.
If you were a 5-star and ranked in the top 10 of your class, you certainly hope to make an impact day one. And we continue with those day one impact guys, going to the number 5 player in the nation. That is wide receiver DeCorian Moore out of Duncanville, Texas.
He's a verified burner. I think he's the most electric offensive playmaker in this class. We saw it last year at Duncanville. He just anchored a Duncanville 4x200 squad that set a national record for how fast that time was at the Texas State meet. Snappy route runner, finds ways to get open. He's a menace after the catch. Someone's going to get him, and you're going to see him on your TV screen in 2025. He's ready to go. He can carve out a role.
At number 4, cornerback Devin Sanchez out of North Shore, and he is committed to Ohio State.
Good day to be a Buckeye, especially when we just talked about Naeem Offer. Now we got Devin Sanchez, 6'2", 170, 10'6'9", 21'7'3". You think about the genetics as well. Both parents athletes at UTEP. Dad played football. Mom was in track and field. This is a height, weight, speed corner that can do a little bit of everything, and he's about as pretty as they come. So when you talk about checking boxes, that's Devin Sanchez. Love the ball production, love the fluidity, the ability to get in and out of breaks as well, his mirror ability and man-to-man. He's got it all.
Coming in at number 3, offensive tackle David Sanders out of Providence Day School in North Carolina.
He's been dealing with a labrum injury, which is why we haven't seen him this offseason. He played through it as a junior at Providence Day, was the Gatorade North Carolina Player of the Year. I said this with Josh Petty, but I think it applies to David Sanders. He could be a top 247 pass rusher if he wanted to go that route. Love the frame, love his reactionary skills. He's going to have to put on some mass, but this is a prototypical tackle that can match speed rushers at the game's highest level.
The number 2 player in the nation, quarterback Tavian St. Clair out of Bellefontaine. He is committed to Ohio State.
This is a profile that's one of the most intriguing, I think, of any signal caller in the country. 6'4", 224 pounds. Andrew got to see him over the offseason, and a guy that Andrew loves, and, the group has come around on as well. But prototypical frame, the throwing motion, he's loose, he's athletic, can play on the perimeter. As you see here, he's got a little bit to add with his mobility, too. 22-9 as a starter, 75 touchdowns, 18 INTs. He's already thrown for over 7,000 yards. But the more you study him, the more you see that this guy is an ascending player, and then with what we saw in the NFL draft, why not?
The number 1 player in the class of 2025 is quarterback Bryce Underwood out of Belleville, and he is committed to LSU.
Yeah, Emily, he maintains that number one pole position. I'll be honest, there were some conversations about potentially making Tavian St. Clair the top guy, and that's because Bryce Underwood, our last exposure point to him was that Division I state title game up in Michigan Thanksgiving weekend. I thought his final drive of the year left a lot to be desired. Had a chance to play hero. He wasn't. But Bryce Underwood, the past month, he's been the alpha dog at 2 different events. I mean, this is someone, Cooper said it with Julian Lewis's resume. How about Bryce Underwood? He is 40-2. He's thrown 120 touchdown passes. That's the most out of any quarterback we have charted here in the 2025 cycle. He reminds me of Deshaun Watson. You know, we had question marks about him. He comes out and he answers back with 2 punches right at the OT7 in Orlando and then the Under Armour camp in New Jersey. Clean mechanics, reminds me of Deshaun Watson at this stage.
There are the 32 5-stars in the class of 2025. Andrew, you just kind of teased it. You considered, some people within the room considered Tavian St. Clair to be the number one player. So how wide is the gap between him and the number one player, Bryce Underwood?
I think there's a sizable gap here. What's unique, you know, Bryce Underwood, we're not going to get him. It sounds like he's not going to be out in L.A. for the Elite 11 finals, which is fine. We've had some high-profile guys not be there. I mean, I had my fingers crossed that we were going to get Tavian St. Clair versus Bryce Underwood with, you know, Julian Lewis, George McIntyre, Matt Zollers, Keelan Russell all out there. So this one's probably going to play out during the senior seasons. We'll see if we get them in the All-Star games. You know, Bryce Underwood, he's just so clean as a player. He, too, is also young for the grade. On the flip side, Tavian St. Clair, I love how he is wired. You know, spending some time around him at the Elite 11 Regional up there in Columbus where he's going to play his football at Ohio State. You know, he's the first really FBS recruit to come out of his high school in over 60 years. He's got a clean stroke. You get around him on the frame. I can't wait till some of these other guys on the scouting team get a chance to see him. I mean, he looks like a linebacker. He looks like an NFL quarterback. This is how you want them to look. He's gotten better and better every year. I think the year-over-year improvement when we talk about these quarterbacks with Tavian St. Clair, it is there. You know, he has gotten better. He gave up baseball. He wanted to focus on football. So we'll see. I think this is going to be a storyline through the rest of the cycle. You know, Bryce Underwood versus Tavian St. Clair.
All right, so there's a bit of a debate for the number one quarterback, but it is Bryce Underwood as of this moment. As for the number one wide receiver in DeCorian Moore, Coop, obviously making some headlines this week, decommitting from LSU after being locked in since last August. Of course, now his recruitment gets opened up again, and it looks like Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, those are some of the schools in the mix. But why is his recruitment so important as it pertains to this particular wide receiver cycle?
Well, we had 7 receivers in the top 32 last year, 7 5-stars, right? And we have 5 of them right now in the top 32, but it's May before their senior season. So I think when you evaluate, you take a step back. DeCorian Moore, out of all these guys currently in the top 32 at his position, he is the only one, in my opinion, if you were to take it a year back in 2024, that would finish with a top 32 grade. So DeCorian Moore, if you need that number one receiver, and this is saying a lot about DeCorian Moore, a guy that's sub 5'10", this is the guy to go get. So we saw LSU obviously taking on the chin. He decommits last week. You see the schools involved there with Oregon and Ohio State and others as well in Texas. If you need that premier guy and your room is turning over, DeCorian Moore is that guy. So ironically here, when you think about a player comparison, he kind of reminds me of Malik Neighbors. Different, sure, in height, but in terms of stature and just competitive type of nature, Malik Neighbors, a lot of people talked about him in the pre-draft process. It was that he had this dog mentality. That's the same way DeCorian Moore plays football. I love his run after catch ability. I love how strong he is at the catch point. So if you need that dog, I don't know how many of them out there are there. DeCorian Moore is the one guy that I would say, hey, you got to go all in for.
I don't know how many schools would say, nah, we don't need that dog. Certainly somebody that everybody is interested in their services. You're taking a look again at the top 10 players in the class of 2025. Our scouting team has been hard at work ranking these guys. So make sure, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, I'm sure you know how to find them on Twitter. I know you know how to find them on this broadcast right now. We got lots of questions and comments and all those fun things. I'm going to ask the guys a few more questions, though, because I want to look at, yes, we're highlighting the top 32 today, but this was a bit of, what'd you call it, Andrew, a refresh for the top 247 in total. So I'll start with you. Who are some of the biggest risers outside of that top 32 that we just displayed?
Vernell Brown out of Orlando Jones High School, three-phase impact player. I guess they call him Trey Brown now. Tom Lloyd came on our podcast and say that. Well, he reminds me of Trey Wilson, who is at Florida. This is a guy where you get him the ball and he's going to turn a 5-yard gain into a 25-yard gain. Went 4.51 at the Under Armour camp back in February. As we've dug more into this wide receiver group, I think he kind of represents something we really don't have. He is similar to DeCorian Moore, but we got these big frame wide receivers with Vernell Brown. He's kind of that slot, scheme up some touches, and he's going to make things happen. He's also a really good return man. Love the track and field profile on him. Sister runs at Florida. Dad played at Florida. He was a really good punt returner. I think he's one of the top guys in Florida. I'm based in the Sunshine State. We've gone through this cycle. He has gone up the board, and I think that's important. There's a reason why Ohio State and Florida's Big Three want Vernell Brown, and then he too, Cooper said it with DeCorian Moore. He's got that dog mentality, win at all costs. I think there's some of that in Vernell Brown.
I'm going to go with Adonis Curry out of California, and this is a guy that we like. We like the profile, but we've been looking for these corners, and who are these corners maybe outside the top 32 at the current moment that do have the potential to maybe play themselves into a 5-star ranking, and Adonis Curry comes to mind for me. You think about the offseason that he's had, over 6 foot plus, 160 pounds. Clock 4.45. He's got a 10.58, 21.07. So we love all the athletic and the speed markers as well. But he had a really good workout. I mean, this guy's pretty sticky. And the other thing about him as well, if he's in the trail position, I love the recovery speed and the awareness that he plays with to put himself in a position to win the play. So I like Adonis Curry. I think there's a lot to kind of bet on, obviously, from a physical traits perspective. But when you watch the tape, another player that's certainly dynamic. I like the ball skills as well. So he needs to put on some weight. Outside of that, this is a kid that's really got everything that you look for at the corner position.
Well, we love to highlight the 32 5-stars. Just another reminder, they rank the top 247 players in the nation. So if you want to check out that full list, you can head to 247sports.com. I have more questions, though. Andrew, we're in the season of Elite 11. I know that the last regional was last weekend, so now we look ahead to the finals. When you look at this quarterback class as a whole, what could a potential MVP level performance at the Elite 11 finals for one of these guys do to maybe get them a little bit more maybe higher in the rankings, or just get you guys a little bit more excited about them as we head into the senior seasons?
Well, I think there's some 5-stars up for grabs. We saw it in this most recent NFL draft, 6 quarterbacks in the top 12 picks. It's a position that is valued. And I said it earlier, I like this group. Obviously, and Tavian St. Clair at the top. You got Julian Lewis at 16. Husan Longstreet, we're taking a calculated shot there. We've seen him multiple times this offseason. Love the tape and what he was able to do as a junior at Corona Centennial. George McIntyre, Cooper brought it up. We liked him as a senior, only won 2 games. That's a bit alarming. And then these camp performances, I know it's a camp, blah, blah, blah. But when you pair his workouts and you look at them next to some of these other quarterbacks, I think there is a debate that's certainly there. Is George McIntyre better than a Matt Zollers, who's committed to Missouri, who we like a lot? Is George McIntyre, is he better than Keelan Russell? We were just playing all those DeCorian Moore footage, and I'm like, man, who's that quarterback? Oh, it's Keelan Russell, who's committed to SMU. We like him a lot. So it's going to be a fun group. And then you got Deuce Knight. I've said this in the past. Deuce Knight kind of reminds me of the DJ Lagway from last cycle. All the traits in the world, exceptional testing metrics. We just haven't seen it on the field yet. And Deuce Knight, if he goes to LA and it isn't the most 3 consistent days, that's not the end of the world. But I'd love to see the most 3 consistent days from him, because we're going to get back into these senior seasons. But what's unique about the Elite 11 is we get all these guys in the same type of setting. You can see them go through the same drills, and it gets easy to kind of stack and rack them. So we have a lot of questions. We have some quarterbacks that we have penned. Brian's stumping those guys at the Elite 11. I think they're up to 15 of the 20 invites, 5 more to go. I've heard that's going to be by the end of the weekend. I really, really like this group. It'd be nice to get Bryce Underwood there, but I'm still fired up about Tavian St. Clair, and then really the Matt Zollers, the Keelan Russell, the Deuce Knight. Those guys get me excited.
I think Drew did a phenomenal job kind of outlining what we're looking for. For us, I would say it's the two quarterbacks at the back end of the top 32. I think you look at Hassan Longstreet, and I think you look at George McIntyre. I think both those guys are in a position right now. You could easily swap both those guys with Matt Zollers or Keelan Russell. And if it was me, Andrew, the rest of the scouting team, I think we'd be okay with it. Right now, it's kind of more of a timeline thing. We want to see these guys compete against each other, and that's kind of where we are. So the other two are hard charging. When you talk about Zollers, you talk about Keelan Russell, everything that they bring to the table. Two guys that are trending in the right direction, and George McIntyre, for him, he's got to bounce back. The two live evaluations have been subpar, to be brutally honest, when seeing him in person. Not to say that there isn't a lot to like about George McIntyre, but in terms of what we expected for a five-star caliber player, this is kind of his last audition. So I want to see how he bounces back. Obviously, that's all on public record here talking about it. So it's going to be interesting to see that. And then Deuce Knight as well, I think certainly the most fascinating arm when you break it down, just in terms of what he offers from an athletic profile, size. He's got everything you want. Drew said it, just in terms of the on-field resume. He's missing some things. So we want to continue to see him trend in the right direction. He's had a really fantastic offseason. If he can build off of that, lead 11, and then the biggest thing is carry that onto the field. So no shortage of storylines. I mean, it's a stacked year, and we kind of want to see, all right, who's going to be the one or two names that are going to emerge out of this and really come out for the better.
No, it's fun to watch, but obviously it's great for you guys, too, to be able to compare them literally right next to each other in the Elite 11 finals, June 18th through the 20th. Once again, make sure you check out the full list of the new Top 247 at 247sports.com. Thank you to you both. Also, thank you to the rest of our scouting team, Greg Biggins, Gabe Brooks, Hudson Standish. You guys are the best. We appreciate it. You can listen to these two on the 247 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. New episodes drop every Tuesday and Wednesday, except for this Wednesday, as you're seeing them right here. Thanks again. Make sure to watch live on the 247 Sports YouTube channel or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Also, make sure you're tuning in to our newer show on the 247 Sports YouTube page, Unfiltered, with Carl Reed and Smoke Dixon. A new episode drops later today. And Friday, the guys are hosting a special guest. It's Kenyatta Watson, who is the Director of Recruiting Research and Strategy at Auburn. Tune in for that conversation. For Andrew Ivins and Cooper Petagna, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.